Welcome back to CBS Mornings. President Biden has declared a major disaster in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Fiona brought catastrophic flooding to the island. As you see, the homes have just been destroyed, the infrastructure damaged, and power was knocked out for the entire island. The majority still don't have power today. This week, our lead national correspondent, that would be David Begnaud, has been reporting on the island's struggles with electricity and adequate health care. But 5 years, think about that, 5 years after Hurricane Maria, he also found resiliency and strength. David joins us now from Vega Baja. David, good morning. Glad you're there to tell us the story. Good morning.
Good morning, my friend. Good to see you. Listen, here's the deal, Gail. We came here 2 weeks ago to work on this story. We had no clue Hurricane Fiona was going to come. And the reality is with 1 million Puerto Ricans, U.S. citizens, by the way, on this island who don't have power, they can't even watch this story. But they were a part of helping us put it together. Because at the end of the day, you can talk about a lot of human suffering. A lady who grew up here just said to me, David, being raised here taught me how to live in survival mode. But things are better. They're looking better. They're feeling better. And that's what we came here to tell the story of. And it kind of starts with people just like the man you're about to meet. Carlos Rodriguez and his team are redefining the concept of farm to table.
We say it's expensive to be poor in Puerto Rico. And so part of our dignity list, number one, is good food. Good, fresh, delicious, healthy for them.
Dignity.
Dignity.
Rodriguez's nonprofit, the Happy Givers, employs mostly retirement-age Puerto Ricans who grow, harvest, prepare, and then deliver meals to hundreds of the most needy people here each and every week.
They're the heroes. They survived Irma, Maria, earthquakes, pandemics. Yeah. They're still smiling. They're still giving. They're the true happy givers. I now have 15 moms in this community, right, that pray for me, that take care of me, that throw blessings every time I come. I have friends. I have amazing employees that really believe in what we're doing.
Raised in the southern city of Ponce, after Hurricane Maria, Rodriguez and his family left their lives in North Carolina and returned to Puerto Rico. They bought this sod farm in Vega Baja. You ran into the storm, so to speak, to help and have stayed.
And we like to say this is not just a 30-second video, it's a 30-year vision. And hopefully, David, we won't be needed in 30 years.
It's called La Calle de la Fortaleza. That was the original name. Now it's La Calle de la Resistencia.
Which means?
The Street of Resistance.
Jadimar Bonilla says Rodriguez is part of a growing trend of people who are rising from the ruins of Hurricane Maria. 5 years since Maria. What's happened since?
You could tell a story of nothing has changed, the power is still out, we're still struggling with a lot of things, but the fact is that we're such a different place, you know? In the aftermath of Hurricane Maria, we became emboldened and strengthened and said, no, enough of this, we want a different Puerto Rico.
Bad Bunny may be the biggest hit in music globally. So much of his music, Jadimar, speaks to the issues on this island.
Yes, yes. You can see his soundtrack, how it chronicles the changes in Puerto Rico. Estamos Bien, all about the hurricane. Afilando Cuchillos was literally the soundtrack of the resistance movement here. It's a different kind of assertion of nationalism. So with all the problems, this is where we want to be. His most recent song, Apagón, which means blackout, it starts being all about the problems with the electric grid and, oh, another blackout and how we experience all that. And then it transforms into this plea that he says, we just want to stay here. All I want is to be able to live here.
Bonilla descends from a long line of strong women. She considers her mother and her 95-year-old grandmother among the activists who are still making a difference in Puerto Rico's future.
We want to change our country, our land, the society that we live in, and just help us do that. But let us do it. Let us define what we want Puerto Rico to be in the future.
We're in the midst of an unprecedented reconstruction. Permanent projects are happening as we speak.
In January 2021, Pedro Pierluisi was elected governor. He says it's his top priority to rebuild the critical infrastructure damaged 5 years ago. So how much money has Puerto Rico received to help rebuild?
Well, just FEMA has disbursed over $5 billion on emergency assistance projects. This is basic repairs and individual assistance, actually economic assistance to people who suffered damages because of the hurricane.
Do you think Puerto Ricans rely less on the United States government today than ever before?
I think what we see often is that there are these numbers of, the U.S. government has approved these many millions or billions of dollars. That doesn't always translate to these communities.
Independent journalist Bianca Grollo also returned to live in her native Puerto Rico in the wake of Hurricane Maria. She wanted to cover the untold stories, and her reporting was just featured in a recent documentary released by Bad Bunny.
You have communities growing their own food, collecting rainwater, providing electricity through solar panels because they don't trust that the government can get it to them, and because they've lived through instances where they've been lacking those services.
Grollo cites Casa Pueblo as one shining example of innovation with little federal funding. For example, solar panels have been installed on the roofs of 13 businesses, whose owners all agree to provide critical services like medicine, refrigeration, and cell phone charging to residents during major power outages like they're experiencing now.
So that the barber now has reliable electricity, so that the bakery now has reliable electricity, and that we have an oasis so that when we have an outage in Adjuntas, the people who don't have the solar panels can come here, connect their devices, and so that they're not stranded.
The Puerto Rican people will tell you it is the communities coming together that is helping them survive. And that takes us all the way back to the good deeds of Carlos Rodriguez.
Month and a half, 1 month and a half, no water.
No water.
No water.
And she's just explaining.
And sometimes, no light.
Meet Victoria Ortiz. She's a stroke survivor who lives alone in Vega Alta, struggling to make ends meet. She told us softly how grateful she was to get a helping hand from a happy giver.
I believe that the future of Puerto Rico lies in its community organizing, because when it's the people themselves that are doing it, you see a lot of successes. And even if the general picture might look a little dim, these communities are showing the path of what's possible.
David Begnaud, you have done it again.
Yes.
You always find these things that no matter how dire a situation is, there is always some kind of light, whether it's somebody famous like Bad Bunny, who certainly goes above and beyond always for Puerto Rico, to people who we didn't know until today.
That's the takeaway, my friend. As bad as it may seem, and the suffering is so real, there is a resilience and a smile. Gail, I went into a flood zone this week, and when we left, a man in his 80s handed me a big old bag of avocados with a smile on his face. He had no power, he had no water, and his home was flooded. But he wanted us to leave with something. That represents the Puerto Rican spirit.
Yes.
David, I mean, you know that spirit well. Your coverage there began 5 years ago. You've been back consistently in that time. I'm curious, on the end of this trip, how you're feeling about the island's progress toward where it wants to be, your overall thoughts.
Where it wants to be, overall thoughts. It wants to be less reliant on a government that has consistently failed them and promised to consistently deliver. Does that make sense? That's right off the top of my head. Tony, it is frustrating to be back here talking about some of the same stuff, but I promise you things are getting better. I hear it, and Puerto Ricans, because of decades of mismanagement, really reject their institutions. And they're saying, we just want to be treated like people in the States. We are U.S. citizens. Just treat us fairly. As one woman said, closing thought, one girl said, if you don't want to give us the same amount of benefits here on the island, understand that we have your passport and we can fly to Florida tomorrow. And then you've got to actually take care of us like you take care of everyone else. Boom.
Keeping it real.
Yeah, David, you don't have to promise it. You're proving it with your coverage. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Just astounding work again.
Thank you, sir.